Whenever I make a video about the things that I love in Daggerfall on this channel, I'm guaranteed to get a comment from a few people at some point that breaks down why they hate Daggerfall's dungeons. And honestly, I respect it, because I love talking about Daggerfall and the things that people like or dislike in it. But to be honest, even though I understand where comments like this are coming from, I'm actually a bit surprised about how often I see people make comments like this on my videos. And so I thought today it could be fun to have a discussion on Daggerfall's dungeon designs, the good and the bad, and hopefully by the end some people will either have a new appreciation for some aspects of the dungeon design choices, or they'll feel like it's definitely not for them, and that's okay too. But before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing to my channel or becoming a member through the link in the video description below for only $1.99. You'll be supporting the channel and getting some fun benefits as well. With that out of the way, let's get into today's topic. So let's start with the most controversial design choice in Daggerfall's dungeons that people either immediately love or hate: the massive size of these dungeons. I mean, look at this thing. Daggerfall's dungeons are seriously gigantic. They're built like mazes, and their size is often very nonsensical when considering the context of their location or their purpose. Like this map right here is somehow supposed to be a graveyard, and this can be really immersion breaking for some players. A single dungeon in Daggerfall can sometimes take hours to fully explore, and you might not ever actually be sure that you fully explored it because there's often tons of secret teleporters, secret doors, or secret switches that unlock secret locations. Worst of all, some of these secret locations are actually necessary to advance through a dungeon or complete quests. Or take this part of the wall that's actually a door and looks almost identical to all the walls throughout the dungeon. This would already be enough for many players to just not want to engage with Daggerfall's dungeons. However, the extreme nature of these dungeons can sometimes go even further, like requiring long underwater traversal that might require a really high swimming skill or a potion of underwater breathing, or access to a spell with the same effect. It might require levitation to access a spot in the dungeon, though usually the game will give the player a way to gain that effect in the dungeon itself. However, it can still be pretty obtuse to acquire, like clicking on a hanging chain. So I think in the foundation that I've described here, you can see why many people get frustrated with Daggerfall's dungeons, but there's also a lot to love about some of the design choices that the 1996 Bethesda team made here. First of all, I really like the sense of danger that comes with traversing through the dungeons in this game. There is equal importance on how you execute dungeon delving and how prepared your character is before entering. Did you make sure to bring cure poison or cure disease potions? You have enough light sources to last the length of the dungeon? Is your character built to deal with the type of enemies that populate this specific dungeon? And do you have a variety of different materials for your weapon of choice in case one breaks or you come across an enemy that is immune to a specific material? There's a lot to think about when deciding to tackle a Daggerfall dungeon, and the focus on preparation and understanding the strengths of your character's build is a really fun vibe when you get into the role-playing aspect of the game. I also really love the dungeon atmosphere in this game. The sound design is really incredible, and when I was first playing the game, the dungeons would make me feel slightly on edge, because there was a sense of unknown potential enemies lurking around corners, distant sounds of doors opening and closing, and just strange noises in general. The lighting is dim, and you need your own light source to see properly. The hallways are narrow, adding to the sense of claustrophobia, and making it hard to escape and maneuver when running into enemies. They really did an excellent job at creating a heavy atmosphere in these dungeons, and it's probably one of the few aspects of Daggerfall's dungeon design that most people would probably agree that they really nailed. Another point I want to mention real quick, because I've already somewhat talked about this idea in a different video, but it's the idea that Daggerfall dungeons were not created with the completionist perspective that many modern games have today. It is totally fine to explore even less than half of a dungeon and simply leave after gaining some experience for your skills and acquiring some loot as upgrades or to sell. There is no boss or special loot chest waiting for you at the end of a dungeon. There is no reward at all for killing every enemy or 100%ing the dungeon map. You can simply explore as much as you desire, or as much as you safely can, and then just leave. And this is the way that I personally play the game. I very rarely completely explore a dungeon. I often use dungeons as a way to build up my character's resources, gathering loot to sell later at town, and use that gold to acquire important potions or tools like a horse, wagon, eventually a ship, or just upgrades for my gear. I think this is a really old school game design feature that many players might not feel satisfied with today. Many players want to be able to fully explore a dungeon, kill every enemy, and maximize the benefits of any dungeon they enter. But in my opinion, Daggerfall really wasn't built with that in mind. Abandoning the completionist mindset is actually a good idea for Daggerfall in general, not just for the dungeons, because you can't realistically explore every town and city, every dungeon, or acquire every powerful artifact in the game. There's simply too much to do in this game, and I think approaching Daggerfall's dungeons from this perspective might help players relax a bit and not worry so much about the dungeons. You can think of Daggerfall's dungeons as a balance between the resources you have and how far you can push those resources to explore more of the dungeon. The further you go, the more resources that are required, but in doing so, you gain access to more loot. It's a balance between the risks and rewards provided in dungeons, and more often than not, there's really no need to try and explore every corner. Another point that I think is important to make is that there are a lot of ways to mitigate the challenges of Daggerfall dungeons. Of course, the modding community of Daggerfall Unity provides a ton of ways to customize your experience, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but even without considering mods, there's a lot of options provided to players. For example, the recall spell is a great tool when dungeon delving. At the entrance of the dungeon, you can place your anchor point, and at any point in the dungeon, if you get lost, if you fall down an elevator shaft, or if you end up underwater and you're running out of breath, you can simply cast the recall spell again and immediately teleport back to the entrance. At the entrance, you'll have access to your wagon so you can drop off a lot of the loot that you plan to sell and free up space in your inventory to get back into the dungeon and collect more loot. Recall is an extremely strong tool because there are no restrictions on the spell's use. As long as you have the mana, you can always teleport back to safety even if there's enemies nearby. Another great tool provided to players is the map. I know it seems simple enough, but it shows the player's exact location, the exact location of the dungeon's entrance, and since it doesn't reveal locations you haven't been to yet, it's easy to see which areas you haven't yet explored. This makes backtracking a lot simpler than it would be otherwise. The map can be rotated in any direction, you can zoom in or zoom out, and it's designed cleanly in a very easy to read way that helps you navigate dungeons. But, in my opinion, the best way to improve the parts of Daggerfall's dungeons that you don't like is by taking advantage of Daggerfall Unity's settings and modding potential. First, there's a quick and simple solution you can try in the main settings for Daggerfall Unity. It's a smaller dungeons toggle. This is a great first step in helping reduce the size of dungeons you'll be entering to complete side quests and building the type of game experience that you personally want if you really don't enjoy these super long dungeons. But the modding community is the absolute best in Daggerfall. There are mods that help you identify secret doors by creating a windy noise when you approach one. There's mods that provide expanded console command options if you're the type of player that doesn't mind dipping into some cheating when you want some help. There's mods that provide dungeon loot by making dungeon shelves, cabinets, bookcases, and other items lootable, and I could go on and on with the modding potential available to Unity players. I'm a big supporter of the idea that players should take control of the type of game experience that they want. Daggerfall was designed with player freedom in mind, and modding is an extension of the player taking responsibility and empowering themselves to create the type of game experience that they desire. So I highly recommend applying some of these mods to your playthrough and giving Daggerfall's dungeons another try. With all of that said, Daggerfall's dungeons will always have mixed reception amongst players. Some people love the time investment, the difficulty, and focus on preparation that they provide, while others feel their maze-like designs are immersion-breaking and the large sizes require too much of a time sink, especially when related to side quests that they think should be simpler to complete. It's always interesting for me to hear other players' opinions on this topic, so let me know in the comments where you stand. Are you someone that leans more towards liking or disliking the dungeon designs in Daggerfall? Thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate everyone that tunes into my videos, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Take care.